Now, there's a lot of benefits to creating a writing outline. First of all, it helps you reduce the risk of adding filler, lets you map out the article evenly, gives you a chance to think about the content and plan accordingly, and if you're like me, it helps you remember facts that you want to add to a piece. Well, I'm Michael with WriterSanctuary, and today I'm going to show you how to create a writing outline. Essentially, a writing outline is a great way to streamline what you're trying to create. Now, this is true whether you're doing an article on Textbroker for a client or blogging for yourself. It simply helps you focus on quality of your content. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always hit me up on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, or you can use the contact form or WriterSanctuary.com's website. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do is, this is a bit optional, but learn a bit of how headers work. Now, the reason why I call it optional is because not every client's going to want you to put header tags in HTML. A lot of them do, though, because they can then copy and paste the article and throw it right into their website without having to do much fuss to it. But in content mills like Textbroker, you'll have clients that specifically say not to add HTML because they often do their own headers, which is fine, really, but it's still helpful to learn how to do the headers in HTML. This also includes bullet lists. Now, headers and bullet lists are probably going to be the most common things you create, especially on Textbroker and Writer Access. And these two are really simple to use. Once you get the hang of it, it's nothing to put them in. And you can learn how to do all that through H3 Schools. It's a free platform that teaches you how to do HTML and CSS and a bunch of other stuff. But I'll leave a link to the header page on H3 Schools in the description of the video. Now, you don't necessarily have to use headers to plan out an article, especially if you're doing it yourself. But it's still, you want to create an outline to help you keep the flow going. So sometimes I'll open up a program like Notepad and make it look something like this. I'll have my introduction, the primary article points, and then the subpoints for each article on their own. And then obviously at the end I have my conclusion. So the first thing you want to start off with is your major points. Now let's say that I'm writing a 500-word article for a client on Textbroker about why WordPress is such a great platform. This is such a short piece, I'm only going to need a few major points. So my outline might look something like this. I have my introduction. WordPress is extremely user-friendly. You can build nearly any kind of site. WordPress is a widely supported platform, and then my conclusion. As you can see that each one of those is going to be a separate paragraph and a separate major point to the article. So the next thing you want to do is add your subpoints. Now these are things that are going to be underneath each of your major points that support it. And you want to make sure that every point that you add supports the primary point, especially if you're using headers. So in my WordPress example, it would look something like this. So now under WordPress is extremely user-friendly, I have easy-to-use layout, no coding required, is fully responsive for mobile. Now all three of those are primary points, specifically targeting the primary, which is WordPress is extremely user-friendly. And then I add the subpoints to you can build nearly any kind of site, and WordPress is a widely supported platform. And as you can see, all the subpoints are specifically targeting the major point. And when you're creating your outline, make sure you think about what you're adding. In each one, you don't want to try to force information because then it looks pretty bad. It often comes across as disjointed or confusing. In fact, some major points that you create may be able to stand on their own without having any subpoints below it. And sometimes when you're writing, you can probably think of stuff on the fly as you're typing. So you don't want to overthink the content while you're creating it, because there's a good chance that it's going to change as you go. But just start off with the basics of what you want to convey in each point. And the last thing you need to do is watch the word count. This is especially if you're working on Textbroker. Now with Textbroker, you have a minimum and a maximum word count. Same with other systems like Writer Access and the other content mills that are out there. And I've heard of clients rejecting articles from authors because the word count was simply more than they wanted. Personally, I would have viewed that it was free words, but some people are anal. In any case, you want to remember not to add too much to the piece, but make sure you're still adding quality content to the article. So, after planning all that out, this is what my article would look like on one of my blogs. In fact, this one here that you're looking at is exactly how I set up an article that I wrote 2 days ago. As you can see, the H2 headers are the primary points. What is an outline? How does having a writing outline help? Blah, blah, blah. Underneath the H2 on the one, I have the bullet list coding, which is the ULLI. That's an unordered list. And each one of those points stand on their own. I didn't make them smaller headers because, well, there's only maybe 1 or 2 sentences after each one. And it looks much nicer if it's just in a bullet list. But as you can see in the steps to make a writing outline, I added in H3 tags, which are the smaller one in the hierarchy. Learn a bit of HTML, start with the major points, and it pretty much is exactly what I told you in this video. And then the last one is my writing outline example. And then my conclusion is, but it's still up to you to write. Now, I don't like using the word conclusion or final thoughts and stuff like that. It just seems kind of bland and boring for me. There's really no right or wrong way to do conclusion. It depends widely up to the client and you as an author. Personally, I tend to try to add a little bit more flair to my conclusions unless the client asks me not to. At which point, I just put whatever they want, and sometimes it's just the word conclusion or final thoughts. Still, I think it's boring. So that's it. That's pretty much the basics of creating an outline. It's not that hard. Just make sure you follow it, and each paragraph have to stand on their own. So why don't I use the H1 tag when I'm creating the article? That's because platforms like WordPress and Textbroker, their headline title is the H1 tag, and H1s are usually reserved for titles online. So you never want to use the H1 tag because these automated systems will do it automatically. Doesn't doing a writing outline slow you down? Not really. If you spend a few minutes thinking about what you want to write, it becomes fresh in your mind. So when it comes time to sit down and actually type this stuff out, it comes out so much more clear and crisp, and you have more thought into the process. It becomes way more easier. And before you know it, you racked up like 2,000 words on accident. Now, does this kind of work for writing an ebook? That kind of depends. Now, you can use writing an outline to create an ebook, but I prefer using mind mapping, and I did a video about that recently. Actually, I did a live stream about it. It's just with mind mapping, you have far more capabilities to do different ideas, and it just seems to work better for something major like that. But when you're writing a 500 or an 800 or even a 1,200 word article, writing a simple outline will keep you going. But for an ebook and bigger projects, I prefer mind mapping, even though you can still technically use writing an outline. So what kind of method do you use to keep yourself focused on an article? Leave in the comments down below. Personally, I make outlines on just about everything I create. And like I said, mostly it's because I often forget stuff, especially if I'm doing research. So I'll have the research on one screen. I'll grab a snippet of something I want to add to the article and just throw it into my notepad. And that way I remember that I want to mention that part. It just streamlines the process. At least it does for me. But if you find the video informative, hit the like button. If you want to learn more about Textbroker, freelance writing, WordPress, or anything else I cover, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. I think that's going to do it for me today. I'll see you tomorrow.